If I ever want to go fast in this thing and live to tell the tale, I'll have to be able to stop reliably. Hey guys, my name is Sanatan, and today I'm going to be replacing the rotors on my first gen SAAB 9.5 Aero. When I first bought the car, the previous owner mentioned that the rotors were warped because he didn't bed the brakes properly. I didn't know how to drive stick at the time, so I had to get my sister's boyfriend to test the brakes out, and let me tell you, he was not lying. As soon as he went over 60 kilometers an hour, pressing the brakes even the slightest would result in this severe steering wheel jitter, so I knew I had to take care of it pretty soon. So because I'd never done brakes before, I bought some cheap rotors off Amazon or Rock Auto and I got to work. As I mentioned, the goal of this car is to get it to become a reliable daily first, and then move on to getting performance gear later on. Anyway, on to the rotor swap. The first thing I did was jack up the car as usual. I don't know if it's just me or if it's because I have a shitty jack, but I absolutely hate doing this. It takes me way too long and the jack stands start sinking into the asphalt. After jacking up the front of the car, I rotated the wheels so I could get a better look at the slide pin and caliper bolts. I then moved on to removing the alignment screw on the rotors, which required a 5mm hex bit socket. And then I started working towards getting the slide pin bolts off. The slide pin end caps had to be removed first, followed by a T45 Torx bit. I used a T47 by accident, so it felt a little snug, but it removed the bolts just fine. Next, I was able to compress the piston by wedging a screwdriver between the pad and the rotor, and then I realized that I had forgotten to take off the spring on the caliper, so I quickly took that off and was able to remove the caliper.
Kind of crusty looking, but...
I stole one of my mom's wire hangers and used it to hang the caliper, and then I was able to move on to removing the caliper brackets. The bracket is held on by two 18mm bolts. I had to use a breaker bar to remove the bolts, but it was really easy because of the turned wheels.
Easy.
Oof, bless me. I was now at a point where I could take off the rotor. I thought that the caliper wouldn't be seized because everything had come off so easily, but man, I was wrong. It took a while for it to click that this part would be thrown away later because it was damaged, but until then, I took my time being gentle with it. And then for some reason, I thought this was a good idea. Like that was ever gonna come off. Anyway, I struggled with the rotor for about an hour, so much to the point where I forgot to record. What I ended up doing was soaking everything with WD-40 and going to town on the rotor with a hammer. I then moved on to cleaning everything with brake clean and a wire brush. I started with the hub, then moved on to the caliper bracket, which had a lot of brake dust caked on there. Made sure to give it a proper clean, and then I moved on to the caliper itself. After spraying everything down with brake clean, I made sure to take a minute to clean the area around the piston. After finishing up all the cleaning, it was finally time to begin prep work for installing the new rotors. I made sure to spray both sides of the rotors with brake clean to remove any coating that they came with from factory. I then applied anti-seize to the wheel hubs, and it was time to begin installing the new rotors. It took me over an hour to get the one rotor off, and less than 10 seconds to get the new one on. Funny how that works. I then put the alignment screw back on and started installing the caliper bracket. I made sure to Loctite the caliper bracket bolts and torque down the bolts to 86 foot-pounds. I didn't get any footage of this, so here's a creepy AI vid instead.
Rotor turn so I can reach that back caliper bracket bolt. Setting the torque wrench to 86 foot-pounds. Alright, snug it up. There's the click. It's 86 foot-pounds, right on the money.
Sorry for putting you guys through that. Anyway, I was now ready to install the brake pads and the caliper. I started off by applying lubricant to the brake pads and installing them onto the rotor first. I didn't realize that this wouldn't work because there's a clip on the back of one of the brake pads that needs to be inserted into the piston. Once I did that, I was easily able to install the caliper, and then I moved on to installing the slide pins. So while doing my research on what anti-seize and lubricant to use, I found lots of differing opinions online. I used a silicone ceramic lubricant for the slide pins to grease the caliper corners and the back of the brake pads. Apparently people have mixed thoughts on this, but I used a really reliable source and it told me I'd be okay temporarily. From what I understand, you want to avoid using a ceramic-based lubricant and use a silicone one instead. In the future, I'll make sure to use a better lubricant, but you gotta do what you gotta do when you're on a budget. Now, where was I? Right, I installed the caliper guide pins and torqued them down to 20 foot-pounds. I also didn't record this, but don't worry, I won't subject you to that disgusting AI imagery. Just about the last thing I had to do was install the tensioner springs. The springs that came with the brake kit did not fit on the caliper. I tried to make them fit, but I ended up having to use my original springs. At that point, everything was back together and torqued, and the wheel pretty much needed to be installed. I got it on, made sure to do the other side, and I was pretty much good to go. I then took her for a spin, and the car stopped smooth with no wheel jitter at all. It felt amazing to be able to push the car a bit and be able to safely come to a stop. Now before I end this off, I'd love to hear what brakes you guys run in your car. If you guys have any recommendations for rotors or calipers I should look into for the future, feel free to leave a comment down below, or don't, totally up to you. But otherwise, I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.
Alright, let's run it. I'm good. I'm good, watch this. Easy.